Shantideva says in the first chapter of his Bodhisattva's Way of Life, verse 12, all other virtues, like the plantain tree, produce their fruit, but then their force is spent. Alone the marvelous tree of Bodhichitta constantly bears fruit and grows unceasingly. Shantideva is telling us what excellences and advantages there are if we were to cultivate bodhicitta. So this analogy is specifically for the inexhaustibility and increasing fruits of the mind of bodhicitta. So right now, our contrived bodhicitta that we have in our mind stream is not a fully fledged bodhicitta. It's not the uncontrived bodhicitta that we are aspiring for, but it is what we could say a mind of kindness. And so, because it is not fully fledged bodhicitta, it does not have the same effects as bodhicitta. So, for example, when we accumulate a small virtue, if we were to do so with fully fledged bodhicitta in our mind streams, then the results of any small virtue would simply flourish and continue to grow. And that is because when bodhicitta is first born, it is born with the wish to achieve full enlightenment for all sentient beings, such a noble aspiration. And that is what causes all virtues to flourish and increase. Other virtues which are not conjoined with bodhicitta, for example, small acts of generosity or offering a flower, for example, once the ripened results of those virtues are experienced, then they are finished. As the analogy goes, like the plantain tree, it's like a banana tree. Once it bears fruit, then that stem on the tree dies. Its force is spent. If you think in the context of beings of smaller scope who are motivated to practice virtue out of a desire to attain a human rebirth or a rebirth in the God realm, because their virtues are motivated by that thought, then once they achieve such a goal as achieving a human rebirth or that of a god, that virtue is spent. It no longer bears any other fruit. So therefore, simply by difference of motivation, our virtues either bear fruit until we achieve full enlightenment as with bodhicitta, or their fruits and force are spent upon bearing their result. So to repeat and summarize, it's a difference in motivation which will cause a virtue to continue, to cause, for example, to accumulate waves of merit, or if it's not motivated by such a strong thought as bodhicitta, then its force will be spent upon bearing a fruit. As we always repeat in our daily prayers, may the precious mind of bodhicitta that has not arisen arise, and may that which has arisen not decline. Bodhicitta is likened to something precious, or literally a jewel, because it is rare in this world and it has great value. And we say, may that which has not arisen arise, because right now we only have a semblance of bodhicitta. So may that semblance slowly be transformed into bodhicitta. May bodhicitta arise. And because bodhicitta can degenerate after it has arisen, may it not do so. May our trainings in the 6 perfections and so forth continue to enhance our mind of bodhicitta. So with this thought in mind today, we're going to meditate further on bodhicitta. As explained, bodhicitta is a mind qualified by two aspirations: an aspiration striving for the welfare of others and an aspiration striving for full enlightenment. So the aspiration that strives for the welfare of others is generated by way of the sevenfold cause and effect process. And this aspiration striving towards enlightenment, one can understand as a wish to take on the burden of the suffering of all sentient beings, and an understanding of a need to attain Buddhahood in order to do so, in order to completely accomplish the welfare of others. So keeping that in mind while we meditate on the aspiration towards full enlightenment, keep your body relaxed and your mind relaxed. Right? Don't let it get tightened. And then try to maintain the thought, may I achieve full enlightenment for the sake of all other mother sentient beings. And during your meditation, if all sorts of random thoughts start to arise, such as what's going on at home with the kids or things that are happening at work in the office, then as we did last time, focus instead on the breath to counteract the discursive thoughts. So now each of us should meditate on bodhicitta. So we don't want to meditate too much at once, otherwise it's not very effective. So according to the practice instructions that came down from Je Tsongkhapa, when meditating according to the sevenfold cause and effect instruction, one can practice like so. First, one meditates primarily on bodhicitta, right? Giving rise to that. And then secondly, one moves on to a meditation on the wisdom realizing emptiness, right? So first bodhicitta and then special insight. Whereas when primarily following practice of equalizing and exchanging oneself with others, because the intended disciple of that practice instruction is considered to be of sharper faculties, then first they are encouraged to meditate on emptiness, and then afterwards on bodhicitta, right? Whichever approach you take, both incorporate method and wisdom, the two inseparable wings required to achieve Buddhahood. So, following the first set of instructions, we're going to now meditate on emptiness. Of course, there are many treatises that teach emptiness. Primarily in our tradition, we follow Nagarjuna's 6 collections of texts on the middle way. And out of those, principally his root verses on wisdom, rather. So Geshe quoted a passage. I don't have it prepared. I haven't heard it. But essentially, of course, it teaches that all phenomena are interdependent. And nothing exists from its own side. And without depending upon another, nothing can exist. Likewise, without being empty, nothing could exist. As it says in the Heart Sutra, the 5 aggregates too are empty of inherent existence. 5 aggregates being our body, our feelings of happiness, suffering, our perceptions, the thoughts of it is this or it is that, right? The aggregate of compositional factors, right? Which is essentially all the other aggregates we have that aren't those. Sometimes it's quite hard to pin down exactly what the aggregate of compositional factors is. But anyway, the Heart Sutra says that all of these are empty of inherent existence. So what does it mean to be empty of inherent existence? So what we are saying a phenomena is empty of is the object of negation, which is true existence. We're not saying that the flower in front of me is empty of being the book next to it, right? Therefore, we are not saying that things are empty of other, but empty of self, and that self being their own true existence, right? If we were to say that the flower is empty of being a book, then that would entail all sorts of ridiculous consequences. Like you would have to posit the flower as non-existent when the book is existent, and so on and so forth. So in our tradition, the object of negation is that thing's own true existence. So right now we're meditating on bodhicitta. So we have the thought, I am meditating on bodhicitta. But where is this I? Is it the I that meditates on bodhicitta? Is it in the hand of the person who is meditating on bodhicitta? Right? When you start to search for it, you cannot find it. In general, there is an I, there is a self that exists conventionally. There is a conventional self that is meditating on bodhicitta, that is sitting in this classroom receiving teachings. But the point is, when you start to search for the imputed object, you cannot find it. So when you don't search for it, you can label that as the conventionally existent I. When you start to search for it, you no longer find it, and therefore it doesn't inherently exist. So where is that I that is meditating on bodhicitta? When you search for this designated object, you do not find it. However, it exists conventionally. It is empty of the object of negation, which is true existence. And this analysis is what we call analytical meditation. So having performed this analytical meditation, when you settle on the thought, I am empty of true existence, You can place your mind there in the manner of placement meditation and hold that thought. And that's what we're going to do.
다 수불허시 시네 nga 아직 저주쌤 곰 심베드 nga데 지금 템버를 주비 동아이야 삼레 미바 딜라테네 안 곰스와
So, with your body relaxed, your mind relaxed, hold the thought this I that is meditating on bodhicitta is empty of its own true existence. So, in reality, we do not have an uncontrived mind of bodhicitta or an fully fledged realization of emptiness. They're quite difficult to generate as beginners. But we have to create the path for them to arise and slowly head towards them. And therefore, we have to start by giving rise to kind thoughts and some sort of coarse understanding of emptiness in order to place very strong imprints in our mind so that we can develop these later. So to do so requires that we engage in some deep level of study of the Buddha's teachings, as well as his followers, the great Mahasiddhas of India and the subsequent masters. And they recommend that we hold these two minds close to us as dear ones, right? If you think when you take a tantric initiation, if you're not doing so with thoughts of bodhicitta and emptiness, and likewise you don't have a thought of renunciation, then when you engage in tantric retreats, right, like the approach retreats, it's very difficult to bring about some fruit of your tantric practice if you don't have a strong foundation in these minds of bodhicitta, emptiness, and renunciation, right? So it's very important to keep them close, right? Consider them as dear friends. Now we're going to turn to Essence of Refined Gold. And Geshe essentially read down without giving explanation until the end. So in order that we get the transmission and completely cover the text, I'm going to read it down in English. So where we left off is page 20 in the middle, the one sentence before the outline, a brief explanation. So it reads, the best method to generate bodhicitta is the oral tradition known as the 6 causes and 1 effect. I will explain this briefly and then in detail. So the brief explanation. The first cause is the awareness that all sentient beings have been your mother. From this arises the second cause, recollection of the all-embracing kindness of each and every one of them. This gives rise to the third cause, the wish to repay their kindness. This wish transforms into the fourth cause, love, and the fifth cause, compassion. Love and compassion are the forces from which spring the sixth cause, special intention. This eventually ripens as the effect, bodhicitta. This then rolls on to the omniscient state of enlightenment. As a preliminary to all 7 of these meditations, make your mind level by means of meditating on impartiality towards all sentient beings. If the mind sees some beings as dear, is hostile towards some, and indifferent towards others, it is not sufficiently mature to be able to meditate upon all beings as having been your mother. If the mind has no equanimity, any love or compassion generated will be biased and unbalanced. Therefore, first practice equanimity. Begin this by visualizing various neutral people, those who have neither harmed nor helped you in this life. From their side, each of them wants only happiness and does not want suffering. From your side, each one of them is like a member of your family and has been your father and mother in many previous lives. Think, in some lives I have held them dear and have helped them, whereas in others I have held them as adversaries and have harmed them. This is hardly correct. I should meditate now in order to generate an attitude of impartiality towards them all. Once you have meditated like this upon neutral people, then consider those who have helped you in this life and whom you therefore hold as dear, and those who have harmed you in this life and whom you consequently hold as adversaries. Develop impartiality towards them both. Finally, generate impartiality towards all sentient beings of the 6 realms. So, if we are to generate bodhicitta by way of the 7-fold cause and effect instructions, first we need to cultivate impartiality. And this is essentially what is preventing us from giving rise to bodhicitta. Right now, we're not impartial towards all sentient beings, so we can't think to achieve Buddhahood for everybody equally. Because right now we split people into categories. Some people we consider to be our close ones, such as our relatives. Others we consider to be distant from us and our enemies. And the majority of sentient beings are simply neutral. We don't particularly like them or dislike them. We're indifferent towards them. However, if we continue to maintain these categories where we are partial towards sentient beings, then it's extremely difficult to actually generate this sevenfold cause and effect, right? These 6 causes. So therefore, it is emphasized heavily to start with meditation on equanimity. And in Tsongkhapa's Lam Rim, he instructs us in this meditation of equanimity. So he says, first visualize in front beings who are neutral for you, right? Those that we are not attached to nor are hostile towards. And contemplate that we have no reason to be particularly attached to them or hostile towards them, and hold that thought of impartiality. That's quite easy, right? That's why we start with them. Then we move on to our dear ones, which are a little bit more difficult to be impartial towards, because in our society, conventionally, we are taught to be extra kind and friendly towards our relatives, for example, our mothers or fathers. And therefore, we're encouraged to cultivate attachment towards them in a sense, if you think about it. But contemplate that the only reason that we are particularly attached to them right now is because they have benefited us in this lifetime. And then contemplate the reasons of them not necessarily having done so in previous lifetimes, and try to cultivate impartiality towards them, right? We want to equalize all sentient beings, remember? So cultivate impartiality towards the dear ones as well. So having done that, you then move on to your so-called enemies and visualize them in front of you. And we need to eliminate this feeling of hostility we hold towards them, which is particularly hard. So right now we hold the thought, this person is my enemy because they've harmed me in this lifetime, right? Essentially, that's what it comes down to. We have no other reason why we are hostile towards them. It's simply because we can remember that they have harmed us in this lifetime. But if that is simply the reason you are hostile towards them, then they also deserve your affection because they have been your parents in previous lives and have been your dear ones before. So, contemplating different reasonings, you should try to become impartial towards these beings you currently consider your enemies. And thinking in this way, you should hopefully arrive at a feeling of equanimity and impartiality towards all sentient beings. And this acts as your basis for the sevenfold cause and effect meditation. So when Tsongkhapa explains in his outline achieving impartiality towards all living beings, he mentions these 3 types of impartiality that you encounter across different Buddhist treatises. So he says there's equanimity with respect to application, it's called. And Geshe said, well, equanimity with respect to application is a point that comes up in the context of calm abiding and special insight. That's not what we're talking about here. And then Tsongkhapa says there's the feeling of impartiality, which is not a happy feeling, not a upset or suffering feeling, but a neutral feeling. Again, that is not what we are trying to cultivate here. It is the 3rd type of impartiality, which is immeasurable impartiality or immeasurable equanimity that we are trying to cultivate here. So essentially a thought that may all sentient beings be free from suffering and have happiness, right? It's the foundation for these thoughts. So essentially, sentient beings from their side don't want suffering, they want happiness, just like us. And from my side, I need to cultivate the thought that is impartial towards them because of that, right? And therefore not have strong attachment towards some and hostility towards others. And if I can cultivate such a thought, this is the impartiality that is the foundation for the sevenfold cause and effect instruction. If I'm not able to cultivate that, then whatever thoughts of love or compassion I may have become biased, right? If you have biased love and biased compassion, how can you think that all sentient beings have happiness, or may all sentient beings be free from suffering? It's not possible. So therefore, we need to eliminate this strong attachment to our relatives, for example, and this strong dislike and hostility towards our so-called enemies of this life. And we need to think that there is no ultimate friend or ultimate enemy. We need to contemplate how they constantly change positions, not only throughout lifetimes, but in this very lifetime. Sometimes enemies become friends, and friends become enemies. Equanimity is essentially seeing all sentient beings as the same. Right now, we have thoughts of this person helped me, so I like them. This person hurt me, so I hate them. Well, if you think about it, if the reason you like someone is because they helped you right now, then shouldn't you dislike them because they harmed you in a previous life? And likewise, if your reason for hating someone is because they hurt you in this life, or let's think not just in this life, but today, right? If your reason is, I don't like them because they hurt me today, well, they have been your mother and father for an entire lifetime in your previous life. So therefore, shouldn't you like them because of that reason? So when you start to think in these terms, you then start to break down these strong categories that you have imposed upon people in this life of being your friend, your enemy, or a neutral person. And these categories start to fall away, and you start to see that you should logically view all beings with impartiality, not being strongly attached to some and strongly dislike others. And keeping this thought going, we're now going to meditate on equanimity towards all sentient beings. So cultivate the general thought that is removed of thinking, this person is my enemy, this is my friend. and these people are neutral, and equalize all sentient beings. Cultivating a sense of equanimity is really important and also really useful for us in our daily lives, right? We all go to work and we meet all sorts of people throughout our day. Some of them are angry, some of them are arrogant, and it's really helpful when we cultivate impartiality towards them, right? Even though they may be mean to you, you can think, oh, this poor person, right? It's due to their afflictions that they're acting out in this way. It's not really their inherent nature. And you logically reason yourself into being neutral towards them and not getting offended, not hating them. And it's really helpful for yourself. So some people think that, if someone says something rude to you, that you have to respond in kind, or if someone hits you, you have to hit them back. Otherwise, you're weak or you're letting people walk all over you. But if you think about it, it's much better to cultivate patience, because if you're rude back to someone, or if you hit someone back, you're just holding these horrible feelings and thought in your own mind, right? You're not able to let go of the situation. One sec. So if you hold this resentment or you hold a grudge because someone was mean to you, that's that is negative karma that you're accumulating, right? A grudge is literally an affliction. So the longer you hold it, the more negativity you're creating, right? And if you're not patient towards others or practice forbearance, then essentially you're just accumulating all sorts of negative conditions in your life so that it won't go well. So it's much more pertinent to not fight back, to not respond in kind when people are rude to you, and so forth. So we've covered equanimity, and then we move on to the first of these 6 causes, which are recognizing that all beings have been your mother. So in Tibetan, the phrase is literally knowing as mother, which is a little bit, it complicates things, because what does that really mean, to know all as mother? It means to understand that all sentient beings have been one's mother at some point, right? Not that they are your mother right now. And again, this topic is a little bit difficult because there are different levels of intelligence or faculty among Buddhist disciples. Some are of inferior, dull faculties, and some are of sharp faculties. So dull faculty disciples are essentially disciples who cultivate faith in what the Buddha said without requiring a logical explanation. So for them, this topic essentially boils down to, well, all sentient beings have been my mother because the Buddha said so. However, if you're a sharp facultied disciple, you require some logic to satisfy this statement. And that can be satisfied, for example, by the extensive explanations of Dharmakirti in his Pramanavadika, particularly in the 2nd chapter, where he gives extensive reasoning that proves past and future lives. Because in order to prove that all sentient beings have been your mother, you need to prove that samsara has no beginning or end. So, because samsara has no beginning and end, once you've logically proven that, you have to think, well, I've taken rebirth continuously without beginning. And in all those rebirths, I was either born from an egg, I had a miraculous birth, I was born from heat, or I was born from a womb. So not all of those births require a mother. For example, gods take a miraculous birth. They're not born from a mother's womb. They just pop into existence. And likewise, births from heat don't require a mother. But if you're born from an egg or born from a womb, then you have a mother in that lifetime. So thinking in this way, since I've taken endless rebirths, right, from an egg or from a womb, within those lifetimes, another sentient being has had to have been my mother. And it's not necessarily the mother of this lifetime, right? Your mother in this lifetime wasn't your mother throughout all other lifetimes. In fact, your mother in this lifetime has taken on every other role in your life in other lifetimes. They've been your enemy as well, for example. So think of that with respect to all sentient beings, that throughout my infinite rebirths I've taken since beginningless cyclic existence, they have all been my mother, my enemy, and have taken on every single role possible. Therefore, all sentient beings have been my mother. So this can be very difficult to visualize when you meditate on it. But you should try and reason yourself into the conclusion, right? As a Buddhist, I accept past and future lives. Therefore, if I accept past and future lives, when I take a rebirth, if that rebirth is from an egg or a womb, then I had to have had a mother in that lifetime. And since those lifetimes were infinite and endless, all sentient beings have been my mother at some point, and likewise in my future lifetimes, other sentient beings will take on that role. So logically try to think about it and meditate on that thought. The next cause to meditate on is recollecting the kindness of those mothers. So if all sentient beings have been my mother, then they have exhibited a kindness towards me that my mother in this lifetime has. So think how your mother of this life carried you in the womb for 9 months and took such great care while doing so, and then gave birth to you and raised you. Likewise, in your previous lifetimes, the mothers that birthed you took the same care. So contemplate it in this way. After my mother gave birth to me, my parents kindly took care of me, gave me milk, fed me, clothed me. Then as I grew up, they educated me and put me on a good path in life. And such love and affection they gave to me. So in the same way, in my previous lifetimes, surely all sentient beings fulfilled the same role with respect to me. So think how all other sentient beings were so kind and took the same level of care. We're going to continue to read down in Essence of Refined Gold. In the second outline, be mindful of the kindness of the infinite sentient beings. So this is very straightforward. It's written in very clear language. So let's read it down. How has the mother of this life shown you kindness? When you were in her womb, she thought only about how to protect and care for you. After you were born, she took you and wrapped you in soft garments, held you in her arms, gazed on you with eyes of love, smiled on you affectionately, out of mercy gave you milk from her breasts, and held you to her body to keep you warm. Then, for year after year, she prepared food for you and cleaned the mucus and excrement from your body. Even if she were gravely ill and you contracted a minor disease, she would think solely about you. She shielded and protected you from every difficulty, gave you whatever she could to help you accomplish your wishes, and anything you could not do by yourself, she did for you. In fact, she protected your life and person in every possible manner. In this way, repeatedly contemplate that your mother has helped you greatly and has been extremely kind to you. So, understanding the kindness of your mother of this lifetime, you then take that into your meditation and apply it to sentient beings who have been your mother in previous lifetimes. It says, then visualize simultaneously the three categories of beings: those close to you, such as your family and friends of this life; neutral people with whom you have had no real contact and adversaries; or those who have harmed you in this life. Consider, consider how each of them has been your mother uncountable times in the past. Uncountable times they have given you a human rebirth, protecting you as much as the mother of this life, showing you immeasurable kindness and helping you limitlessly again and again. We don't often recollect the kindness of our parents, do we? We are very happy to just forget it and move on with our lives. But logically, we should never forget their kindness because they have done so much for us. And therefore, we should repay their kindness, right? We should help them when they need it, and we should make prayers for them and so forth. This is really important to do. Does anybody have any questions?
Questions? Any questions? Don't be shy. Put up your hands. Okay, I think everyone knows what's going on in the class.
It's important to recollect emptiness and bodhicitta, and it's important to meditate on them a little bit each day. Quite often we become despondent and we give up too easily because we meditate on emptiness or bodhicitta and we think, well, I just can't generate the real thing, and we feel like giving up. But we shouldn't do that. Think about Westerners these days who can sit in meditation for hours. I mean, of course, they aren't meditating on these minds. They're meditating in order to eliminate some sort of temporary suffering in this life, right? And try and make this life easier for them, which is good. It can work in that way. But what we are trying to accomplish here is something of much greater benefit, not only in this life, but in the future. We're meditating on minds like bodhicitta in emptiness to enhance our collection of merit so that we may achieve Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. So it's not really the same. So it's really important, therefore, to try and cultivate them a little bit each day and keep them close to yourself, right? Don't forget them, but keep them close.